Hello, everyone on Facebook Live and on Spreaker.com. As we are waiting for Facebook Live to go, it is going.
I love my background.
It's a very nice background, and I'm looking forward for Facebook Live to see that. And we are welcome on Spreaker right now to Agree or Disagree the podcast. My name is Kevin Olenek. You can, of course, like Agree or Disagree the podcast on Facebook, as well as you can like us on follow us on Twitter, A or D the podcast. Follow me on Twitter at KVOLE. And you can also subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. iTunes, Google, Apple, Spotify, etc. I feel like there's a bit of an echo. But
we are getting an echo.
We are getting an echo.
That's because I was sharing your post. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. Okay,
I was trying
there
to do
we
the
go.
Same thing, and that's why I muted myself.
So yes,
I started the echo and then muted, and then you continued the echo.
Well, let's restart again. Welcome to Agree or Disagree the podcast, the Lockdown Happy Hour. We're on Facebook Live. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Spreaker right now. And then you can also subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. My name is Kevin Olenek. You can add me as a friend on Facebook, Kevin Olenek. You can follow me on Twitter at KEVOLE. And we have Deirdre with us. Hello, Deirdre. You're looking very nice, by the way.
Thank you very much, Kevin.
And what are you drinking right now?
Today is rye and ginger. Crown. That's Crown and ginger.
Crown and ginger. Yes. Nice. Mark, what are you wearing? That sounded awkward to say if those on Spreaker, but you have a very unique shirt on.
I've got the shots. I'm just in a simple sport coat and a t-shirt, repping my local beer, which will be my theme for probably the next 25 weeks. And that's about how many beer shirts I have. So.
Excellent.
I'm currently enjoying a New Levels Reaper's Choice. I'm a big fan of their. Make sure I get this going the right way. Big fan of their delivery model. They're spraying everything down with isopropyl to keep their staff and customers safe. So.
Absolutely. Kristen, Kristen has taken the advice of the folks of Jacksonville, Florida, and those that are driving currently to Banff, Alberta, and also decided to travel to San Francisco, California, based on your background. Are you really?
I have. I'm. This is my moment with Uncle Jesse. I'm gonna get in there now. What's happening?
Right. We'll let you interpret what "in there" means for yourself as an adult, but
I don't think I need to. I think people understand.
I think people. It's subject to interpretation. Yes.
It's Uncle Jesse.
It's Uncle Jesse, of course. Yes.
Sorry. Yes. Go on, Kevin. I feel like you're flummoxed.
I'm not flummoxed at all. Actually, I am impressed that you have a San Francisco background that you have found. Where did you get that background? I'm actually impressed more than anything else.
It's a default background.
Oh.
It literally said, "Do you want to pick a background?" And then this was my option. Oh. So I actually didn't do anything impressive at all. I just picked something.
Okay. Well, we will get into a lot of different things today, and it will. We're going to be talking. It is the one we'll start with the UCP, and we'll get into some COVID information. But I do think where we start here, I think will build us throughout. And if you are on Facebook, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to add them in there. We will get them going in there. Kristen has sent out a Twitter with one of those famous houses that you may want to participate in. Maybe Kristen can find that and share that as well.
It's pinned to my profile on Twitter.
Yes. Okay. I will. It's basically which house will you be in? And here's the problem with yours is you have one with Joe Clark, and anyone that does not go with Joe Clark, I feel, is going to be alienated. or homeless.
A lot of people have not chosen Joe Clark. There's like literally one person of everybody who's commented, and that was Les Stelmack. So I love you, Les Stelmack, if you're watching. Thank you for your great choice.
I did choose a house yesterday that had Doug Ford in it.
Oh, interesting.
Oh,
Yes.
that was the This Hour's 22 Minutes one.
It was, and the
But you
options
get a bunch
that
of
were
beer.
available. Sorry?
You got a bunch of beer and you got to listen to freaking the hip all day.
Yes,
So why not?
exactly. It was
And
the
Doug
hip.
looks like you could drink beer.
That's
so.
right. And he's going to probably at least keep me entertained by talking about politics.
Oh yeah,
Right? So
he
that
would
was the
be
biggest thing.
hilarious to hang out with, I would imagine.
Right?
Yes. So
Yeah.
Kristen's house is House 1, Stephen Harper, Louis Riel, John A. MacDonald, Renee Levesque. House 2 is Pierre Trudeau, Rob Ford, Mackenzie King, and Poundmaker. House 3 has Kim Campbell, but it also has Jack Layton, Brian Mulroney, Tommy Douglas, and Kim Campbell. House 4 is Jacques Parizeau, Jean Chrétien, Margaret Trudeau, and Maurice Duplessis. And House 5 has Ralph Klein, Joe Clark, Wilfrid Laurier, John Diefenbaker. House 6, Lester Pearson, Preston Manning, Robert Borden, and Lucien Bouchard. And my vote, honestly, would have to be House 3. I think there would be a lot. I think Jack Layton and Kim Campbell would create great conversations.
Yeah, you had me at Jack Layton, but you really won me over with Kim Campbell, so...
Little known fact, Jack Layton's father served in Brian Mulroney's cabinet, so that is the connection there.
Ah, nice. So
Yes.
you actually put some thought into how you build your houses.
I did. And the reason why Pierre Trudeau and Poundmaker are in the same house is because Justin Trudeau pardoned Poundmaker earlier this year.
Ah, okay.
So,
See?
so
Not just a pretty dress.
No, you're not. I'm going to try to create a poll for that as we're talking, if I can multitask here, or if someone can make a poll while we're doing that, that would be great.
You can't do a Twitter poll with 6 choices.
No, you can't.
No, that's true.
So people are just going to have to bomb the snot out of Kristen's food.
Yes, that's
Because she
happened
loves
before.
when people do that.
Yes.
And then, we need somebody else to come in and make completely racist statements about one of the other posters that has nothing to do with the original statement.
Yes.
Also-
I would like a dude to come in to explain to me what I really meant to post.
I
I
got accused of mansplaining last night.
Oh, really?
Oh, what?
Anybody who knows me, I'm probably one of the least mansplainers out there, but apparently after you call out a troll 6 or 7 times, she just says, "No, you're mansplaining me." All right.
It's because they think that's a mic drop.
So, but back to the original question, I'm going to choose House 5, and not because I'm sucking up because Joe Clark is in there. I'm originally from Saskatchewan, so I'm going to go with Deep the Chief.
Diefenbaker is one of my favorites. When I go to Ottawa in the after times, I want to go to the Diefen Bunker, which is a bunker that he had built for himself when he was Prime Minister.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, Deirdre.
Which house?
You picked House 3.
I picked House 3, yes. Yeah, like
Kevin,
I
did you
said,
pick?
I picked House 3.
Oh yes, I forgot everyone who didn't pick the right house.
Are we? Yeah, I feel like we're about to be punished for what we've picked, and I apologize. But I've always kind of had an admiration for Kim Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
I'm already on some of the comments. Dwayne Chauman has already announced that houses 3 and 4 are his version of hell. So,
and Dwayne,
and Bernard the Roughneck would be like the house parties they have in House 2.
True. I think they'd all be partying. I think Brian Mulroney would be partying like no business.
Oh yeah.
The question would be: is Brian going to bring his Ben and Caroline?
No one cares about them. All we care about is Brian Mulroney.
Fair.
Which Ralph shows up in House 5? Like early days Ralph that was throwing stuff at people, or late days Ralph that wasn't?
Early days Ralph.
Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Nobody wants calm down Ralph.
No,
if you're going to be stuck in a house, it may as well be with early days Ralph.
Yes.
Well, that goes back to this hour's 22-1. It's like, it was like I get a bunch of beer and Rob Ford. It's like, or Doug Ford, or Rob would be good too. Either. But the hip tunes might keep us a little mellow, and I'm not the biggest Blue fan, but I'll take it over. I mean, I was leaning to House One because of the Screech, but it's not a great rum. Much like it wasn't a great beer.
I didn't know what Screech was.
Oh!
I've never had Screech, but it sounds like a delight.
Yeah. I was really weighing House 4 on that one because Seth Rogen, I think I could just spend days, weeks, months with.
Are you talking about the CanCon house?
No, this hour has 22 minutes.
Oh, because someone posted a CanCon quarantine house with all sorts of Canadian television shows. And you know what they missed because they're monsters? Degrassi.
Yeah, that's a horror. You can't miss Degrassi. That is a Canadian.
Yeah, I'm refusing to participate because if I can't pick Degrassi, then there's no point.
Well, and there's the thing, though, too, is if I have...
That's it. It's over. Table calls.
Because I have it in a box and it keeps falling. So there we go. Sorry.
I thought you fell, so all is good then.
It actually really looked like she tossed the table.
Issue. There we go. I'm not even touching it. Sorry, I love you.
Welcome to Lockdown Happy Hour.
Lockdown.
It's just started. We're all relatively sober.
We're all relatively sober, yes. So, well, to get into the issues that we are going to talk about, it is the 1-year anniversary this week that the UCP was elected in Alberta. Jason Kenney and the UCP gained the majority. And I know that Mark and Deirdre, you talked about this on your podcast, Political R&D, which you can talk about as well.
Did we do the 1 year? We didn't do the 1 year because
no,
Robbie
I don't
and
think
I
you
did.
talked about it.
You and Robbie were going to do that.
Yeah. Robbie and I did it. It's not posted yet.
Okay, it is going to be up. Okay.
Yes.
Because Mark and Deirdre was seniors.
Yes. Well,
Yeah,
and we are going to talk about seniors as we get into this.
You just
and of course, as I loved how I set up the agenda and the fact that you'll be a little bit more drunk when we talk about seniors. So that was.
You want me drunk and angry? All right.
It's an interesting approach.
Well, you gotta, as a moderator, you gotta kind of think outside the box a little bit. We're in different times. We need to innovate. So there we go.
Apparently, I need to put another beer order in.
Yeah, there we go. But I'm going to ask Deirdre a question first of all about, or a little bit in this a little bit later. But I want to start with Kristen on.
Oh,
what great! Because
She rarely talks in any of these, so I'm glad we're starting with her.
I know.
It's true. I have a really hard time expressing myself.
It's very hard.
For selecting me first.
Yes. Well, I feel like you would probably be the closest to the more positive approach to the UCP. So that's why I wanted to start with you.
Shocking.
Yes. And so what are your thoughts? How have you felt the last year has went?
Well, I mean, I think that there's been some positive things that the UCP have done. I mean, and I'm a little biased, obviously, on this particular topic, but when it comes to the bill that they recently brought in around human trafficking, Claire's Law to allow domestic violence survivors to be able to find out if the person that they're with has a history of violence, things like that. Like they did a lot on those files and they pushed a lot through on those files. They increased funding to sexual assault centers, which was a hugely important thing for the centers. So things like that have been good. They followed through on a lot of their commitments, whether I agree with I'm pro carbon tax, so I was not exactly thrilled with that, but they did exactly what they said they were going to do, which was to get rid of it, to repeal it, their summer of repeal. And then things got a little bit tricky for them. They campaigned on cutting the budget. They campaigned on cutting costs, and that's exactly what they did. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of pushback on that. And I think that they probably didn't necessarily expect the level of pushback that they got because they campaigned on it, because they won an overwhelming majority on it. So that was a little rough for them, but I think overall, I mean, the first year they did exactly what they said they were going to do. Like, if you were surprised by a lot of their decisions, then you probably didn't read their platform.
It's true.
Okay, so Deirdre, I know that you guys did some seeking out on opinions on the UCP, and I wanted to, and you sought these out on Twitter, which is not in love with the UCP. Did you get any information? Did anyone outside of the Twitter sphere talk about the UCP?
What we found was that it was very focused on some of the things that people were not happy with, which is, fine. I mean, that's what's really going to motivate people to say something. So there is that. But no, there wasn't really anything, like I said, good that was mentioned. We had to figure those out on our own.
All right.
And my thing actually was exactly what Kristen said, which was they did what they said they were going to do.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even if you don't agree with it, which there's a lot of things I don't agree with, but I'm not going to say that they did stuff that they weren't, that we weren't told about. They did.
And I think the other thing, and this is really taking away from the earlier point that I never speak, just practicing here to everybody. But I think the other part of it is that, you see the opposition saying a lot of times, oh, this is not what they campaigned on. They didn't say they were going to do this. If you look at the majority of their decisions, especially around funding, they're keeping things at a certain level, but they always said, and they've talked about this from before when they were in opposition, that they wanted to bring our costs in line with other provinces. And that's exactly what they've chosen to do. And whether or not you agree with that or you don't agree with that is not a surprise either. So when people say that some of their decisions around education and health are surprising, they're actually not, because this is exactly what they talked about for 2 to 3 years around changing the way that we fund things in this province.
Mark, how have you felt the UCP has performed within the last year?
Well, if you're going to do unpopular things as a government, you do them in your first year because the electorate doesn't remember 3 years later. So, the pain they're causing teachers and nurses and doctors and, line up the list of people, this is the time to do it. This is the politically smart time to do it, because within 3 years' time, you're hoping nobody remembers. And so we got a pandemic now, which, some people are, going through them with a fine-tooth comb. I would say for the most part, Jason Kenney's handling this well. The rest of his team, not so much, but that's neither here nor there. I mean, they were going to pick fights, and we knew that. And so that's what they did. And to Kristen's point, I think some of the pushback they weren't expecting, like, when they threw all the funding requirements onto the municipalities for the additional policing, there was some city and town mayors who kind of grumbled a little, but that was it. There wasn't a lot. There's no pushback from rural Alberta. But when you get to doctors saying, hey, you know where I'm going? New Zealand. That's starting.
I would go there too right now.
That's getting some people really riled up right now. People that they were counting on just being complicit for the next 3 years. That's going to have an impact. And I don't know for how long or if it will continue on. Because we had talked about that. I think Deirdre and you and I were talking about that with our podcast that's coming out Monday. Is that rural Alberta might be upset, but they're still not going to NDP. So what does upset mean, and what does it look like?
Yeah.
So I guess let me see. I'm going to put this question here. I'm going to ask the question about the opposition. How have you felt the NDP have they been an effective opposition?
No.
It's tough. It's tough to say for sure no, because even though the UCP hasn't recognized when they have backed down on a couple of things due to some heavy pressure from the opposition and in media, I'm thinking of let's go with with doctors. Remember how doctors originally weren't being paid? They weren't paid for a virtual visit, and then the day before the TELUS Babylon was announced, the day before that, the UCP turned around and said, "Okay, no, we will pay our current physicians in Alberta $20 for a virtual visit." And then there was huge issues after Babylon was announced, and it turned out that they were getting paid $38 for a virtual consultation, and doctors couldn't use it with their current patients. So there was like this little uproar that kind of went about. The NDP was 100% there. The UCP was like, "Oh no, now they're going to get paid for what a visit would cost, which is $41. Now, there's never been any kudos to the opposition for, pushing on that. But so I'm kind of stuck. Like, no, I don't like the 24/7 outrage machine. I don't care what party it's coming from. I don't like that. But at the same time, do I think they've been effective? I can look at things that they railed on that used to be down and change. Just, it's not like the opposition's getting credit for changing their minds.
But at the same time, what they want to do is to take people who are UCP voters and switch them over to them, right? Like, the whole point of an opposition is also to win an election in 3 years.
They're government in waiting.
Right? And I don't think they've done that. And I don't think that they've changed minds other than playing to Twitter, which was already their base anyway. Like, I don't know if they've expanded their appeal beyond that group of people.
But I almost think too that that's a struggle for an opposition party right now during this pandemic. Like, I know there was a before pandemic. I really can't give you too many details on that, what that exactly looked like. I do recall that the outrage machine was too much, right? It was too much. It was too polarized. Polarized. I think I was almost going to go Polaroid there. Anyways, it was too much. So I wasn't happy with the way that things were going then.
Well,
that things,
Yeah, pre-2019, NDP was government and the UCP was the outrage machine. Mm-hmm. And yep. So all they've done is change seats in the legislature, but they haven't changed functions. And the outrage machine doesn't fit the NDP. It doesn't fit their mantra, their people, True. How they deliver.
Yeah.
So don't be a UCP opposition. Be an NDP opposition. Be different. Like to Kristen's point, if you want to draw people back across the floor, provide them something there other than, oh, hey, there's a group of angry people. You know what really attracts me? Angry people.
Right?
Yeah. And it's the exact same mistake that the federal Conservative Party is doing right now.
Oh, yeah.
Constant negativity all the time, and it turns people off. And people don't want that right now. Like, we even have negativity in our everyday lives with everything that's happening.
With reality.
Yeah, we don't need that. And that's a huge mistake that Andrew Scheer is making, and I think it's a mistake that Notley has made. And like my point, I think, from last week, is that's not the Rachel Notley who won the election in 2000.
Right. And to be fair, there's a reason why Andrew Scheer wasn't wanted as the CPC leader. It's not their fault that everyone was demanding they stop the leadership election.
Oh, God. That.
Yeah. Someone needs to have a chat with Aaron O'Toole's social media, Tim. But,
well, right after they're done talking with Peter McKay's.
Well, that too. Yeah.
Pick one, honestly.
Rotary phone.
Yeah.
You can do a blindfold and throw a dart.
I have a friend of mine who was like an organizer for Scheer, who's heavily into the Big C conservatives, is a Big C conservative. And he texted me here the other day going, who the hell do I vote for? And I'm like, I don't know. There's incompetence on top of incompetence. Like, really all it's showing right now is that the Conservatives aren't interested in forming the next government.
No, they aren't. And obviously, with what started with McKay's missing an open net, and now O'Toole and his social distancing from China, and Marilyn Gladue was saying a bunch of nonsense, ridiculous shit the other day too. Like, it's because I consider myself, I'm sure this is shocking to everybody watching this, I consider myself a conservative, and there is nobody right now that I feel I could vote for. Like, it just, there's nothing.
Awful. They're awful. Yeah. This is like the worst. You know, that was something that Leslyn Lewis, actually, she sent out an email when Peter MacKay was first saying, you know, maybe we should, was it Peter MacKay? Yeah, when Peter MacKay was saying, it was Peter MacKay, Marilyn Gladue, and Derek Sloan, who were all kind of like, you know, maybe we should, like, put Canada first. That was Peter MacKay's thing. But so maybe we should, you know, postpone the leadership race. And Leslyn Lewis sent out an email, or on her behalf, whatever, her name's attached to it. And it said, that this was an opportunity to have this leadership race during such a thing as a pandemic, was a real opportunity for these candidates to show what kind of leadership they would give to the country. And I'm sorry, but as much as that was a great ideal, it really was. And you're right, it was an opportunity. And what we're seeing is none of you should ever be running this country. So.
Yeah. Well, at this point, most of them are showing that none of them should have been elected, with the exception of Peter, who's not elected, but he
not as Leslyn Lewis.
Oh yeah, she isn't either yet. Yeah.
So.
Steve,
yeah,
Rick,
saving graces.
It's making it very clear that people need to take a good deep breath before they put an X on the ballot and go, do I want this knucklehead representing me?
Because it's a team of knuckleheads at the moment.
I think it's just guaranteeing that Trudeau's going to win a majority government, like in the next election.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if he did not at this point.
Yeah, especially if he calls it in what would you say, Mark? 2 years?
I don't think he's even going to wait that long. 2 years. 2 years. All the goodwill from this election or this pandemic would be gone. I'm guessing.
Yeah. But he can't call it while we still have to social isolate.
No, but you do some plans for elections in Canada, and you can do it in the spring of next year or maybe the fall. But you use the budget to cause a non-confidence vote, and away we go.
Yeah, and I think and this will be a huge moment for the NDP too. It'll be interesting to see what happens with them, because I think Jagmeet Singh has done a good job, and he did very well in the last election, much better than most people expected. So it'll be interesting. And I think especially if Trudeau continues, like his announcement today around Orphan Wells was great. If he continues to do more and more around the oil and gas sector, it'll be interesting to see how that plays with the NDP if Jagmeet continues to do well.
Well, that was a great segue, Kristen. That was a fantastic announcement, because it wasn't really giving money to oil and gas. Like, yes, they're the ones benefiting. They're not the ones who have to, pay for this. However, it was money that came into Alberta. It was money that kind of came in for oil and gas. But if you're an environmentalist, it wasn't money to the oil and gas sector. It was money to clean up and reclamate, and that was a fantastic, that was politically stunning.
All right. Well, let's hear from how Jason Kenney responded to that here.
Critical support for the Canadian energy sector. There were three elements to today's announcement. Firstly, a $1.72 billion contribution to the governments of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and BC, as well as the Alberta Orphan Wells Association, to clean up orphan and/or inactive oil and gas wells, creating thousands of jobs, while also having lasting environmental benefits. This is a package that we have been working on with Ottawa, frankly, since last summer, because we were still in challenged economic times 9 months ago. Not as bad as now, but we have underscored this is a really efficient way of getting good blue-collar, skilled labor back to work, folks who have been laid off and who are maybe right now facing unemployment in the oil field services sector. This is an important lifeline for hundreds of companies, large and small. This is going to breathe new life into many rural communities where small service sector companies are a key part of the local and regional economy. And this is in addition to the hundreds of millions of dollars that the government of Alberta has lent to the Alberta Orphan Well Association.
So, Kenny, it goes on for like we don't need to hear the whole thing, but basically, as politically savvy as that was, and I don't disagree with you. By the way, before we go on, I just want to give it a shout out. Steve Ricketts, well-known Twitter follower, has been chiming in saying it's good to hear a variety of views. So shout out to Steve. Hello, Steve. But the political response from Kenny, what was your thought on that? And it's going to bridge to I want to hear from this, and I'm going to bridge this to BC in a moment here. So,
go, Mark.
My only question on all this is, like, we've been working on it since last summer, so he knew this was coming. So, has he been spending money out of the Alberta budget, knowing that there's probably in the neighborhood of $1 to $2 billion that was going to come from the federal government to clean up oil and gas problems? I wrote a op-ed, editorial, whatever the hell you want to call it, yesterday, and it's like this is dealing with the dirty little secret that Alberta has got, is that we have a tendency to go and punch holes in the ground, take all the oil out, and then dump the cleanup costs onto the taxpayers. And we've been doing it for the better part of 70 years. And Alberta, we've insisted that we have low taxes. We've insisted on a low royalty regime. We've insisted that the federal government come in and pay for all this stuff. What we haven't insisted is the people who have made the mess clean it up, which that's the Alberta way that I know and understand is you make a mess, you clean it up. We're entrepreneurs. We do these things. But there's a whole chunk of people, and they're the ones who are now pissed that they weren't getting any money out of this 1.7, that they didn't get anything from Ottawa. And I'm like, I'm sorry, you're running an oil company, and I broke a guy down on Twitter today showing that, I'm sorry, your $3.5 million personal compensation package wasn't supported by the government. Piss off. Like, I am so annoyed. And for anybody who doesn't know, I used to work in the oil patch. Freaking engineer. Frack engineer. So, and that's part of it. Is like they're also talking about this is helping services. Not all service companies. Drilling companies don't get money for reclamation. Frack companies don't get money for reclamation. Most of the manufacturing companies don't. Like when we talk oil and gas, it is a huge economy into itself. There are so many different layers and services that, it's like saying manufacturing. Like, what kind of manufacturing are you talking about? When you say oil and gas, there's so many different layers to it. So a chunk of the oil and gas industry got some money, and a bunch of guys who weren't working are now going to get to go to work, but they're specialized work. Not everybody can go in and reclaim an oil well.
Mm-hmm. That's why I let Mark go first.
Yeah, I agree completely with Mark. He's right.
I will take you down.
Yeah, but no, he's completely right. Like, this is not substantial enough for the oil and gas sector in Alberta. They have promised for a long time, like Bill Morneau's little statement a couple weeks ago, that it was coming in a matter of hours or days or however long it was going to take. And this is the announcement. And they are walking that extremely fine line right now of, okay, we announced for oil and gas, but look, it's an environmentally friendly announcement. It's not that bad. And this is typical Justin Trudeau liberal stuff. It's that they're walking this very fine line because they do not want to show all-out support for the sector. And I think that they need to do more because Alberta is in an incredibly precarious position, not just because of COVID, but because of a lot of things. And you're going to see a very negative impact on our economy after this is over. And Trudeau needs to do more to support that, regardless of whether or not it's going to be popular with the opposition.
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily that it's whether or not it's popular with the opposition so much as popular in every other province aside from Alberta and Saskatchewan. Like, it's the issue that, actually Jason Kenney made that fantastic announcement on the 31st of March about how Albertans have now basically donated their tax dollars to invest in the Keystone Pipeline project. And then within 2 weeks, that order came up blocking construction for that project. So this becomes problematic for taxpayers like us who are now invested in a project that may not go through, that is being held up yet again. This is the same judge that put out an order in 2018, and they just got in front of a federal judge on Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was for that order. So the fact that this order came out a day before that is going to be another 2 years before they get in front of a federal judge. And so as much as Justin Trudeau would like to say, as much as oil and gas promoters and employees and executives would like to say, we need money too, I think we also need to look at where is that money best invested, because right now we have problems. And by we, I mean Alberta's oil and gas industry, and what's going on in the U.S. right now is just kind of the Trump administration is taking away to pay their own producers to keep it in the ground. This is what's going on down there. Do you honestly think that they want more capacity for Canadian oil? No, they can't even use what they're currently making. This is like Alberta Energy, Alberta Oil and Gas is in a much bigger issue. Like they've got much bigger problems than whether or not Trudeau is going to give them some money. Like I don't know. Kenny's investment right now looks like he just lit $1.5 billion on fire.
Not necessarily though, because
and potentially $7.5 billion, depending on what happens to TC Energy
if they take that loan.
But however, the thing is there is work going on in Alberta on Keystone, so it's still happening within Alberta. You are putting people to work, and that's
also in Montana.
Yeah, but in Alberta there are people working, and I think that is ultimately what the Alberta government wants to see from the federal government is an opportunity to put people to work and give people work, because you're talking about thousands of people.
It's only certain people.
For
because remember, we did
sector,
lay off 25,000 people.
That's actually not true at all. That number is not accurate in any way, shape, or form. It was not 25,000 educational assistants. But I guess if you say it enough on Twitter.
Some are psychologists and speech therapists.
And it wasn't even 25,000 at all. It's not even close to 25,000.
It was so what was it? It was taking away funding. It was taking away $128 million in funding.
Yes, but not even close to 25,000 people have lost their jobs. So that number is
we ended up looking at it going, it's only $5,000.
Well, and how many of them are going back on for 3/4 pay?
Exactly.
So they're laid off.
Benefits.
Which that's being paid by the federal government. But the other thing I wanted to point out was the reason that Justin didn't put all this money into downtown Calgary was this is not a group of people who are suddenly going to start voting red.
Yeah,
that's true.
Like you could go in and find the top 20 oil producers and say, you know what, your jobs matter. Let's wipe your corporate debt out completely. We're going to spend $100 billion to clean up the oil and gas industry financially and put people back to work in Calgary. And you know what's going to happen? Everybody in Calgary is going to vote Conservative. Mm-hmm. So, and
they'll thank Jason Kenney for getting it done.
Yeah. So, Justin picked the smartest route. It's like, it's a big number.
It doesn't piss anybody else off.
People in Alberta are going to notice, but people in Alberta aren't going to stop voting Conservative. The environmentalists are going to like the fact we're doing cleanup and not, building another pipeline. So, wins all around for everybody, except for the taxpayers.
So, but
not Justin Trudeau.
But what this leads to in my mind here is this relationship that Alberta has had, which has historically been acrimonious with the federal Liberal Party. And
what?
I know. This is breaking news.
Thing to say.
This is unbelievable. This is the hottest take in podcasting history.
We're still all relatively sober, by the way.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. And I'm just wondering if this is impacting some of the perceptions and some of the decisions going on in terms of how people in Alberta are responding to this outbreak. I mean, we sort of made a little bit of a joke about it, that there were people in Banff, or there are people heading to Banff this weekend that are going to be turned around. There has been some perception that some people in Alberta, I'm not believing this, but there's a perception that there's Albertans disobeying or not believing what's happening, or the announcements or the trust coming out of Ottawa. Jason Kenney was critical of Dr. Theresa Tam, and her handling of this. Is this relationship affecting how things are going in Alberta, in your mind?
This is normal.
Yeah, and Jason Kenney wasn't wrong to criticize Dr. Tam. He was right. Like, what he said was correct. And it's issues around, no, because you read the National Post, you read everything.
It's in the National Post. Heaven forbid. They're going
all countries across the world, with the exception of us and two others, including France and the UK, have all called into account what China has said. They have all questioned their own health officials. There's nothing wrong with questioning our health officials. And what Jason Kenney said was that he felt that they should have closed the borders earlier. They should have done better care for people coming into the country. There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't think that's necessarily...
He's judging her on statements she made in January, and this is a guy a month later who didn't even acknowledge COVID in the budget in February. So don't be judging what somebody said in January when you're not. Your track record a month later is even worse.
Yeah, but
he's not the one responsible for our health, and she is, and she was incorrect, she was wrong.
He stood in front of the crowd saying we've got to send PPE to another province, and look how our economics are equal to everybody else's health. So he does equate our economics with everybody else's quality of life.
Mm. And
if there's things to go after Theresa Tam about, it's not the things that Jason Kenney, and he can't sit there and go, we're just going to use the FDA's data to circumvent Health Canada, because that's what we're going to do in Alberta, because we know better. We don't have a base of people who are doing the research that Health Canada is. Like, Dr. Dina is awesome, but Dr. Dina is not doing all of this work. She's doing analysis much like Dr. Tam is, and the FDA has already been identified of going around their own protocols. So for us to come up and say, well, if it's okay in the U.S., it's okay with us.
No, they are the guinea pigs. They are the guinea pigs. The FDA treats them like guinea pigs. It's gross, but you know what? I always felt safer in Canada knowing that we were waiting. We would wait 2 to 3 years after the FDA approved something, and we'd sit back and go, how's this going to work out? And if you look at the number of class action lawsuits that go on in the U.S. for different drugs, it's sick, and it's disgusting.
And you've got the CDC. CDC is not even allowed to investigate mass shootings in the United States because of lobby efforts by the NRA. So you can't look at the U.S. system and sit there and say they've got purity, because it's so far from it. It is so corrupted and tainted. Now, Germany, maybe, but I got Angela Merkel, who's actually talking science because she has a degree in science, a PhD even, talking science. I'm listening to Merkel. I'm not listening to Jason Kenney when it comes to anything scientific.
Jason Kenney is not making the decisions himself. He's making them based on what he is hearing from the chief medical officer. That's the thing. A lot of people say what he says, and then they decide, because they don't like Jason Kenney, that they don't like what he's saying. But what he's saying is not different from what leaders across the world are saying. And what he is also saying is that he is going to, within reason, look for anything he possibly can to make this better in our province. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I just think people don't like it because they don't like him.
I'm judging him on what he said, and if he's using the advice of the medical officials, point me to the quote from Dr. Dina that says we got to disregard Dr. Tam.
And that was the other thing, is that during that PCNBC, Power and Politics,
Power and Politics.
When he was like, he made a comment that Dr. Tam was just repeating the People's Republic of China talking points. Like, it was ugly.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong.
But at the same time, that was all the information we had at that point. I mean, our provincial health officers were telling us the same thing. The risk to Albertans is low. The risk to Canadians is low. Everyone was saying the same thing because they were looking at the only real thing that we had, which was, at that point, we had China to look at and say, okay, this doesn't look good. But even Deborah Birx, that's your health office, one of the health officers down in the U.S., she said that when these numbers were first coming out, it was like, okay, this is kind of like SARS. Like, it's not a good thing, but this is not a global fucking pandemic.
I don't think she used the
that was
word
an
fucking.
amazing way of swearing. Like,
did I say that? Okay, so. But
back to Kevin's question, is this driving the resistance between Alberta and Ottawa? I think it's just another day, another page.
For the course.
Yeah. The West has always wanted in.
There's absolutely nobody who is pro-Trudeau who has changed their mind, and there's nobody in Alberta, especially the crazies, who are super anti-Trudeau, who think he's just like ruining everything and just purposely trying
their mind hasn't changed.
There are people in this province who hated Justin Trudeau because of who his dad was. Like,
there's a lot of people who hate him because of who his dad is.
But Justin didn't even get a chance to piss them off in his own right.
He just had a name. Just
because you're the kid of Pierre, screw you. Like, that was it. That was all. Like, I've got a buddy of mine. Hopefully he's watching, because I'm going to call him out on it. He hated Justin purely on the basis that his last name was Trudeau. Had Pierre, had Justin changed his last name to Johnson.
JJ.
He'd be fine.
Justin Johnson.
Double J.
Wouldn't have gotten him elected in Ontario.
But brings up a lot of anger in Alberta. Absolutely 100%.
And it's only 37 seats, so.
Yeah.
Well,
33.
I found the Capello's
Trudeau
thing on Twitter. Here, let's hear it.
It's the same Dr. Tam who is telling us that we shouldn't close our borders to countries with high levels of infection, and who in January was repeating talking points out of the PRC about the no evidence of human-to-human transmission.
I just want to be clear, though, Premier, because those are pretty specific comments that you've made about Dr. Tam. Do you feel that she isn't qualified to be doing her job? I mean, when you refer, for example, to the recommendation around human-to-human transmission, that is what the science was saying at the time. Were your public health officials telling you something different?
Yeah, so that's from Twitter there, that clip was played from. But just so people were wondering where Deirdre was getting that from, I found that clip to play it. But the thing here in BC, and Deirdre posted this on Twitter, but the BC government was also quite critical or quite insistent that the federal government closed the borders much earlier than they did. That Adrian Dix was consistently asking the federal government in the middle of March, close the border, close the border, close the border, close the border. And now they have a self-isolation plan for those that have traveled from outside of Canada into BC. They've outlined that there's a 14-day plan that they need to follow. They're providing support for them. And I'm just trying to slowly pull up Deirdre's Twitter here, who had posted the actual article. But they're seeing results. And I'm wondering, and it's what sprung this out here was Deirdre's comment about watching a government work with the federal government as opposed to feeling like they stand against the federal government. So what are you seeing in BC that is that I think that Alberta can benefit from, or are you seeing a difference, or what are your thoughts on what you're seeing in BC right now?
Oh, you mean Alberta I think takes lessons and learns things?
Yeah. I think you might be misremembering that particular tweet, because I know which one you're talking about, and it wasn't really commenting on how the two could work together. What it was talking about was the province taking a proactive stance of what can we do to protect our residents when people are flying in from out of province, out of country. And now, granted, theirs has only been in place for, it sounded like 1 week.
Yeah, it's very new.
Yeah.
It's very new.
But point is, they're actually doing something. And in Alberta, we had a little more grandstanding about how the feds were at fault, the feds were at fault, the feds were at fault. So I do believe that tweet said, wait, provinces can actually do something other than photo ops, stomping their feet and blaming the feds. Mind fucking blown, because that's not what we were doing here. So I'm thinking if that's not the tweet that you were thinking of, but
that is the tweet I was thinking of. But and maybe I misunderstood what you said, which I do apologize for. But it does seem to me what I'm getting from there is you're noticing a significant difference in how BC is approaching the federal government as opposed to Alberta.
Well, and like I said, like they, I'm not going to say, there was a lot of tongue in cheek there, because as a province, we could have done something similar. As a province, we could have had people at the border as well, at the airports going, this is what the situation is like. What are your plans? We could have done it too. Instead, it was photo ops and the feds aren't doing their job. Well, okay, so then do something different. Like, again, with the complaining and the outrage machine, like, just stop complaining and figure out how to do something different. Like, it's not out of your own power. So, I 100% respect the fact that BC has been doing that it's working, that they're talking to people and saying, do you have an isolation plan? And those who say no, they say, okay, come. That sounds bad. Come with us. But, they're being put into a hotel. They're getting, all right, here is your isolation plan. Because that's true too. Like, somebody could live with, 3 roommates. Like, no, I don't have anywhere else to go. Okay, well, you're going here. So, like, it's, and I believe the numbers were small, like over 3,000 people had flown in. They were only actually housing in hotels, like 100 and some, or maybe it was 1,000. I don't know. But the numbers were not, they were not incredible.
No.
So I don't know.
No. And Adrian Ditch was on the airport here in Vancouver asking why that wasn't happening for a while too. So it's not like, I think one of the things that I do think is important is not like the BC has, the provincial government has not been critical of the federal government's decisions, because they have been. It just, I think it feels a bit that their approach hasn't been as adversarial as what happens in Alberta. I think maybe that's...
Nothing is as adversarial as what happens.
No, I know. But it seems, it feels to me, and I could be wrong, but it feels like BC has been more positive about it. It's not like there hasn't. I think where I do agree with Kristen is I do think that there is some valid critiques about how the federal government has handled this, but I don't know if it's necessarily the time, because but I think...
When is the time, though? Like, that's the thing, is that people keep saying, like, oh, it's not the time to criticize, or it's not the time to question. And, like we talked about, I think, 2 podcasts ago, when Robin Urbach and a bunch of other columnists were getting into trouble for asking about masks. Why isn't now the time to criticize? And yes, things will become more obvious as things go on. But I think you have a right to ask questions. You have a right to be concerned about the way that certain things are being handled. And I think that there is no right or wrong time to do that, because if you're just going to wait till the end, then things could be mishandled over the course of the next couple months. So I don't see any problem with people criticizing now, whether it's criticizing Jason Kenney for his handling of it or whether it's criticizing Justin Trudeau. You have every right to criticize your government. That's the whole point of democracy, is to be able to call out things if you don't think they're being done correctly. And I also would take some umbrage with the suggestion somehow Jason Kenney has been more critical. He was critical of the government once. He did a talk with Power and Politics where he was critical of the government. Other than that, he has actually been incredibly positive about the way that the government, and specifically our unofficial Prime Minister, Chrystia Freeland, has handled things. He's been extremely positive about that. He said positive things about Justin Trudeau. So I think it's unfair to say, because he was critical in one particular interview, that he has been critical across the board, because that's not true.
So one of the challenges, and I would agree, in normal circumstances, you want that sober second thought. You want somebody looking at things with a different set of lenses. You want things debated and decided in a civil manner, but this isn't normal times. We've got a rule book that is act first, consider second. And so people are running on that rule book. I mean, very early, the experts were saying in a pandemic, not doing something or taking too long to do something is going to have a bigger impact than if we sit and debate and discuss and analyze. And so now we're sitting there and we're trying to engage people for decisions they made a month ago, 2 months ago. Like, why didn't you do this when this was happening? And it's like, did we have all the data? Did we have that data on that day, or did we have it 3 days later? Like, it's one of those things where we're asking our officials to act quickly, because we've got a minimum of a 2-week lag time that, decisions made today, we're not going to see until May. And now we're going to have people in May go back and go, wait, on the 16th of April, you made this decision, but on the 23rd, we had this data. So why didn't you make a better decision on the 16th? It's like, because I couldn't. And I couldn't wait till the 23rd to get a piece of data to see if whether or not that extra week was going to be good or not. So, and I mean, this goes back to what we were talking about before, about shutting the border. We wanted to shut the border with the U.S. sooner than they shut the border with us. But the problem is Donald is a petulant little child, and we can't shut the U.S. border to the U.S. without ramifications. And you're seeing it down in the States right now. You got governors, if they don't tell Donald thank you enough, they're getting punished by not getting the medical equipment they need.
And then he wants to liberate them.
Yeah, and it's like, we rely on both the U.S. and China for our stuff. So do we want to get in a pissing contest with either one of them about where we're getting, like, we got a ton of PPE from China. The last thing we need to be doing is pissing them off, whether it's social distancing or otherwise. This is the reality we're at. It's like, I might not like you. I might not like the fact that you didn't report your data. I might not like the fact that you caused this to happen around the planet. But you know what? You're also making all my PPE, so I'm not going to complain a whole lot until we've got this handled, and then we're going to have a conversation.
Yeah, the China thing I would agree with you on, for sure. But I think that's a much more complex thing.
You can't sit there and say, like, even Deirdre's like, well, why didn't the provinces act sooner? Well, maybe because they just didn't even realize they could, or maybe they should, or maybe they can't. I don't know. It's an airport's technically federal territory. So can a province walk in and implement things as a provincial health on federal grounds? I don't know, but probably need to go find a lawyer. Now the question is, can you just do it anyway and suffer the circumstances? People debate these things, but the whole thing at the end of the day is, I'm not going to sit there and judge whether Horgan or Kenney could have been shutting our airports down on the provincial side, because there's
stopping everyone that came off the planes. I don't know either.
We're making decisions on the fly. Sometimes they're wrong, and we have to grant people that leniency because it's on the fly. We're not going to have perfect process through this.
The biggest issue that like journalists have had, reporters have had, the general public has had is they're expecting answers. They want answers. They want to know this is what's going to happen. This is how it's going to happen. Yet we keep having to go back to that. This is new. We don't know how it acts. We don't know what's going to happen afterwards. We don't know about a second wave. Like, these are just things we do not know. We would love to be able to, every person that steps in front of the camera would love to be able to say, this is what's going on. This is what will happen. Everything is fine. The fact that they're not saying that is because they don't know. They don't want people to panic. They're trying to get the information as fast as possible. But unfortunately, the reality is we don't know how this virus is going to act.
And if anything, making the wrong decisions even worse. Like, you take a look at what's happening in Florida. They're like, oh, we're fine. Open the beaches.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Like, they're going to kill us all.
But this is my point, is that I would rather have the governor of Florida going, I'm not sure, we're keeping the beaches closed for another week just in case, face some reporter going, well, you could have opened them up on the 15th.
Or saying, last week you said you were going to open them up.
Versus somebody opening them up on the 15th, because now you're going to have to go in front of that reporter and they're like, you killed 10,000 people this week. Now what?
Like, why did our infections rise this well, oh my God. Yeah. So
there are necessary overreactions at this point that I think at the end of the day would feel like, when we look back, it's like, okay, we overreacted. We could have,
or we underreacted,
yeah. But
it's hindsight's 2020. Yeah, we can look back and say, gee, if we would have shut down on February the 1st, maybe that person wouldn't have gone on the cruise that first showed up. That was our first case.
I had an article that somebody posted that it was actually a good thing that the San Francisco 49ers didn't win the Super Bowl, because early February, putting 2 million people on the streets of San Francisco when they were just starting to ramp up.
Right. That's your Philadelphia 1918.
Yeah, it's one of those. It was one of those things where it's like, just by pure coincidence, their football team completely dissolved in the fourth quarter, stopped a major outbreak in one city.
Yeah.
But I mean, these are things you can do in hindsight. But at that point, is anybody sitting there going, "Hey, San Fran, we need you to blow the fourth quarter because
public health."
Yeah.
Well, even if that doctor doesn't run the court in Oklahoma, and stop that game between Utah and Oklahoma City, what happens, right?
Yeah.
And
well, and go one step further. What if that doctor out in China hadn't decided to push against the government and tell everybody this was happening?
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's a lot of hindsight, but I mean, I'm watching like Robin Ehrlich making comments like, I've been telling the government this for ages. I'm beating my head against the wall. I got a headache from it. It's like, piss off. Like, that's not helpful.
Yeah. So, and we, we're on Facebook Live again, and we're on Spreaker. We've had a couple of comments.
Are we on the PG Facebook Live or the R-rated? We need to change the settings.
I don't know.
What version of that?
Yeah.
I keep saying piss off, but I mean, it's Deirdre with the
She would just say it very slowly so it didn't sound offensive.
Yes. But one of our questions is Kristen's house. I'll just quickly go through what has happened here.
My Twitter.
Yeah, not Kristen's actual house.
I was confused.
And creeped out.
Yeah.
I was like, I will not be answering questions about my house.
Sign guys with the binoculars.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Number 2 got some. 6 would be fascinating. Yeah, so you can go on Kristen's Twitter and find that.
Lisa Raitt responded to me, and I was very excited.
Ooh.
What did she
Girl
pick?
crush right there.
What did she pick?
House 2.
Who's in House 2 again?
She did not pick the Harper House, which was surprising. House 2 is Pierre Trudeau, Rob Ford, Mackenzie King, and Poundmaker.
Ooh.
Wow.
Lisa Raitt for the win.
It was the party house, so apparently Lisa's the party girl. So.
Lisa parties.
Party house. Party girl. And if you do have any comments, you can go on Facebook Live, comment there, or have any questions, we'll get to there. But BC did their latest modeling yesterday, and
Yes. And it was beautiful.
It was
so many props.
So many props. Well
media,
done. Yeah. And here's what Bonnie Henry had to say near the end.
The negative, unintended consequences of these public health measures that we put in place. And so that is our dilemma. And what we need to focus on for the coming weeks and months is just the right amount of restriction so that we don't end up having those explosive growth, so we don't end up overwhelming our healthcare system and our critical care system. And we are still able to start moving to get our healthcare system moving again and to get our society moving again.
So basically, in a nutshell, BC is in the planning stages and looking at slowly, very slowly, easing the restrictions of what is happening. The numbers today were 29 new cases. They have not been over 50 this month, but they are not necessarily in a rush to get everything out. Dr. Henry did say today, question was asked about Vancouver Pride and PNE, if should they go, and her recommendation is that they should not happen this summer. She also said it would be unlikely that you would be able to do any international travel this year. But, talking about finding a way to move slowly through this. And so wondering from your end, what are your reactions to that? And also, I guess, are you feeling that there is a portion of the public asking for we kind of bridges to what we were talking about before, expecting some sort of answers of when? Because we are seeing in Europe, we're seeing Germany, Austria, Norway, and Denmark, as well as Czechoslovakia, slowly get into that easing restriction portion of this. Are we seeing are people getting a little antsy, or are you feeling that people are still being patient?
Nobody's being patient. Whether or not that means that you are following the rules or you're not, I'm not patient. I'm following the rules. I'm being very, very conscientious of that, but I live in an apartment. A lot of people live in small spaces. They don't have access to their backyards. They don't have access to spaces. So a lot of people are at that point where they're just I want to be outside. I want to see another human being. A lot of people are very, very anxious, and the mental health toll that this is taking on a lot of people is quite intense. So I think there is a lot of impatience, and we want to know, when the premier gave a speech, I think it was yesterday, the day before, and he said that this would be in place till at least the end of May. It's okay, well, at least that's kind of maybe a end point. So I can look at it and say, in a month, things will change. And then I can sort of look at my life. I think more than wanting to just get out there, people just want to know, which is maybe unrealistic, but they want to know when this is going to be over so they can at least have an end point and something to look forward to.
Well, I think part of the problem is that people are looking at what's happening in Europe going, well, they can go out, so why can't I? It's adolescent attitudes. The problem is that, the countries we're looking at, they were much more aggressive. Many of them were much more aggressive than we were with isolation, borders closing, stuff like that. And so they were able to get that curve flattened sooner. And now they're starting to be able to look at things like, how do we slowly integrate people back in? They're not looking at hey, let's open things up and have a 70,000 person rock festival. They're we can open up a few places. So, so now, and this is part of the problem we were talking about before, is that we're looking at other countries going, well, why didn't we do that? Because had we done what Germany did, we could be where Germany is now. And so, well, we didn't start on the same day as Germany with the infections either. So, it's not everything should happen on the same day, because if Germany's doing it, then so should we. It's, there's obviously a lag time in there as well. Now, I'm not seeing numbers in Alberta that are screaming that, we might get there before beginning of May. I'm not seeing numbers that are going to be before the beginning of June because, we've got people who still got an attitude they can drive to Banff. So it's a little frustrating. I know people are cooped up and they want to get out and they want to have beers and they want to hang with friends and they want to go back to what they were doing. But I think somebody needs to stand up and say, what you were doing in February probably isn't going to happen again until February.
Yeah, but you know what? Telling people that, do you have any idea the mental health toll that would take on people? Like, you live with someone. So for you to say that, it's a lot easier than for somebody who lives alone to say to someone, you are not going to be able to be around humans for a year.
Yeah, well,
people would commit suicide. That is an incredibly dangerous thing to put out there to people who live alone, who are isolated, to tell them that they don't get to be around another human being.
I'm not arguing that, and but there's also another complete subset of people who are within a household who can't be there. Like, there's physical and mental abuse going on right now.
Yes, absolutely.
There's a bunch of different layers of why that's not a good move, which is probably why nobody's actually said it. But we're in a situation where this is going to extend for a period of time. We might get some relaxing. There might be an opportunity to go to the neighborhood pub as long as there's no more than 10 people in it. That may happen down the road, but we're not there yet. And we can't look at other jurisdictions and say, well, they're doing it, so why can't we? It's like, well, take a look at what Florida's doing. We already brought that up. Look what they're doing. Do you really want that to happen? Because, like, the States is going to be a total textbook of what not to do in a pandemic.
Yeah. And you've also got, I think, what Mark brought up there was very important. So as soon as I saw that the modeling that Dr. Henry had put out the other day, the first thing that I did was quote tweeted it with BC identified their first case on January the 29th. Alberta didn't identify their first case until March 6th. So they are 1 full month minimally
we're
ahead of us.
Yeah.
6 weeks even.
Yeah.
So this, and I think this becomes, that was actually brought up to Dr. Hinshaw on Friday during the press conference. And, she mentioned that the provinces were going to be in contact with each other, because how does that work, right? If BC is released a little bit, do they want Albertans who shouldn't be traveling yet? Like, we might actually find that we have to close the provincial borders, because BC doesn't want to risk Albertans coming into the province if they shouldn't be out of lockdown yet BC is. And that's absolutely going to pull people who are like, well, I want to go out, I want to do stuff, I'll go to BC. They don't want that. So things could actually get a little, they could get a little bit more difficult before they get better, because absolutely there are people who are like, this doesn't affect me, this doesn't apply to me.
Well, I also like the video that circulated with Angela Merkel, and I'm so glad somebody actually put English subtitles because I don't speak German. But yes, she's got a PhD in quantum chemistry, but she talked it down to the level that, majority of people would understand. And it's like, if we have an R naught of 3.4, this happens, and we can't do this until this date. And if it's 1.3, it's this date, and 1.2, it's this date. And so she was very clear on what all those things meant. And so people understood why it was important collectively we're not infecting everybody else. I don't know what Canada or Alberta's R naught number is. I don't pay attention to the daily things, but I'm pretty sure we're not at 1. So.
Yeah, no.
Well, since increased testing has come out, since Dr. Hinshaw has increased the parameters around testing, the positive cases have actually increased from 2 to 6%. Denmark is at 8%. I can't remember what BC is at this particular point in time, but certainly at this point, it doesn't, I agree with Mark, there's no particular evidence right now that Alberta should be looking at planning, sure, announcing any easing of restrictions. And really, I don't think that the easing of restrictions that Dr. Henry is bringing forth are going to be a significant difference at first. She was talking a bit about a 15% increase. So if it's a mass gathering of 15%, I think we're looking really, maybe it's barely triple digits. It's certainly, there's nothing that Dr. Henry has indicated that would be at this particular point that we're going to be seeing very large gatherings in BC this summer.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I talked to Deirdre about this offline earlier this week, is that we have to be careful when we talk about a number of cases and number of hospitalizations and our percentage infected and percentage of people identified from testing. We're not correctly identified. It's math geek stuff. But when you talk percentages, like 2% or 6% of testing positive, that's number of tests run is. So the more tests you run, yes, you're going to possibly find more cases, but you might bring the number down because you don't. And we still don't know how many people out there who are infected who actually haven't had a test yet. So, we can't use number of tests run or percentage of people that have been tested are infected as a clear indicator. I think hearing from the officials, they're looking at hospitalizations and death as the actual numbers, because if somebody dies in this province and they haven't been tested and things look wonky, they'll do some digging into it to find out whether or not that was COVID related. If somebody's got a cold, no one's taking the time to test into it to see whether or not it's a COVID or just a cold. So it's, it's part of the challenges are with the symptoms, and a lot of people are asymptomatic, so you don't even know if you've got it or not, which is why we go back to the social distancing. But you have to be careful with the numbers, because the numbers are only telling part of the story.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the death number in BC is concerning. The death toll right now is the number is at 81, and there have been deaths, even though the actual numbers haven't hit over 50. It's been very rare that there has been a day that Dr. Henry has not announced that there has not been a death.
Right, but again, this is also where being a data geek makes a difference.
Why I'm going with that, though, is I do think, to me, the flattening part, that's what is concerning me a little bit, is those numbers aren't changing. We are still seeing deaths from this, and to me, that would be a number that I would think has to significantly change before we even increase even further. Like I still, like, for me, I as a public person, I still will wonder, even in the easing of restrictions, if we really see a lot of people. I mean, we could, because it's summer, but I don't know, for me personally, okay, we'll have easy restrictions if I'm necessarily going to be willing to change my lifestyle in the summer. It would be quite likely, even as we ease restrictions, I'm not sure I'm wanting to ease restrictions, if that makes sense or not. I still think I'll have to put my own data and my own personal decision beside that before I make a decision if I'm going to go anywhere.
Well, I think, and that's going to be a case by case.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I was never one who wandered down to Nashville North at Stampede anyway. I never went to Stampede anyway. So that's not going to impact me personally, whether or not Stampede gets canceled or not. I know it's going to impact 100,000 people a day, give or take.
It's going to impact our STI rates. They're going to go way down.
But I mean, those are decisions on a case by case basis. I get out of the house and play squash a lot. We have a great squash community. You know, it's 2 to 4 people on the court, depending on which one you're playing. That's going to be below most social distancing. Like, once we get out and about, that grouping's still going to be smaller than what the max is going to be. And, you know, if half dozen of us sitting around having a beer afterwards, that's probably still going to be lower. That's where my personal life is going to change. But I know some people are looking forward to being able to take off to the mall or go hang out with 100 of their closest friends at whatever rock festival or whatever. So, or country festival, which apparently more people go to.
I'll take your word for it.
Yeah.
Tristan, did you have any thoughts?
No, I mean, I think it's a difficult thing, right, to talk about, because for a lot of us, for myself, like, it's a very personal thing. Like, so it's very hard to divorce yourself emotionally from talking about this, like, and saying, okay, like, maybe it will be this long, or maybe we're going to have to go this long, because I just think about, like, if I can't see my dad for a year, how I feel about that. And then it gets me extremely upset and emotional. So I think that makes it difficult, but we aren't going to get to go back to normal. That is the reality. And Mark is right that way, is that things are not just going to go back to how it was the day before the pandemic. Like, we don't get to have that for a while, if ever, because things are going to really change in the way that we deal with ourselves, deal with each other, the way we shop, the way we eat, the way we work. I think a lot of things are going to change and probably not go back to the way it was.
But I really do think how Dr. Henry has displayed this, presented this, I feel has been, I appreciate it, because I think she is taking people like you and I, Kristen, who live alone, into her presentation. I think she is taking the mental health aspect of this into consideration when she is bringing this up. And I think that she has found that balance of pragmatism, realism, and optimism and Dr. Henry and Minister Dix have done a really good job in mixing that in. I'm not saying other people haven't, but I have found comfort in that. And Dr. Henry has said that, things, this is going to take some time, but we're not going to be here forever. And I have personally found some comfort in that myself. And I think also it allows for me, there's a willingness and a determination in Dr. Henry's and Minister Dick's presentation that they want to get out of this as soon as possible in a responsible, scientifically proven way that is not going to cause a disaster. And I'm not saying Dr. Hinshaw is not doing that, but I'm just saying that's where I'm finding some comfort. And I don't know if Deirdre is noticing the same, because she's following everywhere else. But
no, I mean, I think that there's been a huge emphasis from the government in Alberta on mental health. Dr. Hinshaw's talked about that quite a bit. And they just announced $53.4 million for mental health and addictions in Alberta. So there absolutely is an emphasis on that, and that's important. And I think we all want to get out of this, and I think we all want to do what we can to make coming out of it happen as soon as we possibly can. And for all of us, all we can do, which is frustrating, is just stay the hell home and don't do anything. As a way. The
only thing that's really going to work.
Yeah,
and it is. I know. I fully agree. It is frustrating. It's. I've got kids from the age of 10 to 18 in the house, and they struggle with it to a point. I mean, luckily they all of them can entertain themselves on their own, but my daughter was more social. She was always out with friends, always, whether it was going to a hockey game or a ringette game or, watching basketball or playing basketball. Like, she did all of those things. So for her, she struggled a lot at the beginning because it was very difficult. And then she turned 18 during the lockdown. And, she is one of those people, 100%, who just cannot wait for the bars to be open again, because she's never been to a bar. And now she's actually of age. She could. So, I'm quite certain that there are people who are really excited to get back into that public sphere. And like, she even said to me that there's a couple of her friends who they are still interacting with others. And she's like, I'm looking at this saying, this is ridiculous. Well, yeah, Ocean, because you talk to me and I tell you lots of stuff and you're paying attention. So, but not everybody is. And the only way that we can kind of stop this is if everybody just stops for a little bit
Well, it's not just the 17-year-olds who aren't paying attention. It's the 57-year-olds who aren't.
I know.
But I did want to challenge you on one thing, Deirdre, is that you said that your daughter hadn't been to the bars yet because she's not 18. Now, I know what I was like before I was legal to drink.
I had been to one. She has yet to be in a bar.
That you're aware of.
Well, that she's told me, and she pretty much tells me everything, even when she's misbehaving. So, I mean, even if she doesn't tell me right then, she'll tell me after.
Just challenge you.
Yeah.
You haven't had a chance to throttle me yet in the Sue meeting. So.
Right? I wasn't staring at you this time going, I just want to strangle him. Yeah. No, that was really out of character. Like, I'm just saying, I don't think that a lot.
See, this is why I love self-isolation, is that people can't physically come after me for things now.
So you feel safer.
Yeah.
No one can yell at you.
Shader's been on my driveway for at least 4 days now, and I just don't answer the door, so...
I knew that was coming. I knew it. You set yourself
It's the joke that keeps on giving.
Tyler.
So
until he does something else dumb, we're going to milk that one until the nth degree. So, and it will happen.
Yeah, that really does keep on giving. It's never going to go away.
So 16,700 as of right now. Again, I know these are numbers, but I need to bring this up in terms of how we go forward. 16,798 cases right now in Quebec, 10,010 cases in Ottawa. That is well more than 50% of the reported cases in the country. What supports, or what can, other than us sitting around and doing nothing, is there anything else that we can do for Quebec and Ottawa at this particular point in time? Because they are going to be the toughest to get out of this.
Well, for starters, we don't go visit.
Well, of course not. No one should be visiting Quebec and Ontario right now.
No. We also don't accept visitors from Quebec and Ontario. Here. Honestly, there's so much going on, but that's a big thing. Like Kristen said, the only thing that you can really do to help everybody else right now is to stay home. Mm-hmm. Stay home as much as possible, which actually that came up. Apparently people are starting to say, like you should only go grocery shopping once a week. Yeah, I would love to grocery shop once a week. But the last time that I went to my local grocery store, they were like, oh, you can only have one milk. And I was like, I have like 3, 4, 5, 6 people in my house that drink milk. 1 4-liter might last 2 days if we're lucky. Like, no, I can't. I need to buy 3 or 4 at a time, and then I can stay out of the store for a week. So, some of these things with the limitations on buying, like, I don't know, do I need to bring them all with me and say, yeah, I need enough milk for this?
Which is also against rules, because only one
right? Only one family member. Yeah. So I was actually, like, that was something that kind of annoyed me, because I do try to shop for 1 week at a time. I have always done that because it's cheaper to do it that way. But I need to be able to buy a certain amount that will get me through the week. And I realized that in most households, 3 to 4 milk would just go bad, right? Like, you would buy that and it would be like 3 months later. Like, no, I go through that in a week. I need to be able to have that much, or else I have to come back to the store, which also costs me.
Yeah, that whole the UFCW asking it to be law that only people can shop once a week. That was such a tone-deaf misstep for a union, quite frankly. I
don't think anybody is running around trying to shop more than once a week.
I think everyone is, and
no one wants to.
At the liquor store.
What's that?
The 26%. What is that poll? Last poll came out. 26% of Albertans are going to the liquor store at least once a week.
Well, yeah.
Except we're only supposed to have 2 to 3 drinks a day.
Yes.
I might be good.
Sorry
for
about that,
2
Dr.
weeks after my last trip.
Yeah. Well, there I'm going to disagree with Dr. Dina. So.
Yeah, I know, right? Don't tell me how to live, Dr. Dina.
Yeah, and not because I know better. I actually do know better, but I'm going to do it anyway. So,
Pandemic rules.
Still love Dr. Dima. Yeah.
Obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really believe a lot of people are trying, and there's a lot of people that simply cannot. They don't have the accessibility to go shopping once a week, and they don't have the ability. Like, yes, you can drive your family and park your van and have your entire family sit in one go in, but there's some people that don't have a car, that are families and
single parents who have young kids who can't leave them at home for an hour. Like, there's exceptions to every rule. I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed to the exceptions. Like, when I was at Costco earlier this week, I was chuckling because there were guys, and not to be racist, but they were ethnic, who were taking pictures of stuff in the coolers and talking to the wives because they didn't know what the wife bought. Like this was normally something, but she's at home with the kids, and so he has to be the one to go shopping. And he was literally and literally taking a picture and then be on the phone and would take another picture. And it's like, I don't know which item I'm buying because that's normally what she would be doing. And so it was like, welcome to the new rules where, you have to do these things now. But I mean, I'm not opposed to, if Deirdre's got to go to the store 3 times a week because I can't buy enough milk, that's okay. I have a problem with the people that are like, you know what, I'm going to Banff this weekend because I don't care.
That's the bigger problem.
At the same time, I was at the Costco, there was also the family of 4 who all of them were over the age of 20. So 3 of them could have stayed home without supervision. And they could have done the shopping with one person. But that annoys me. I chuckle about the guy who has no idea which chicken breast I'm supposed to be buying. But I get it. If Deirdre's got to go to the store 3 times, so be it. I was technically at the store twice because I got a friend of mine that's in self-isolation. I'm now his trip to the grocery store. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's certainly it's a nice idea that we can create a black and white, but as we're seeing in life here, there's not a lot of black and white that goes on. There are exceptions, and
But I would love to be that's like the biggest complaint is that Deirdre went to the store 3 times to get milk, and that's not the biggest.
And Deirdre
complaint.
actually doesn't want to do that, right? Like I don't. I know how much milk I need. I can do that in one trip. They like milk.
Oh, my brother and I, when we were your older kids' ages, we're doing more than that in a week, just the 2 of us.
Yeah. It's, and it is what it is. The only reason I don't go through more is because 18 decided that she was lactose intolerant. So
Decided.
It was self-diagnosed, but trust me, there were some signs.
I love how you've switched between name and age as an anonymous identifier.
Yeah. No one would have heard 4 minutes or 10 minutes ago that your daughter's name was Ocean.
It's like that scene from The Simpsons. Ocean M. Oh wait, that's too obvious. Oh, Mitchell.
Yeah. I named Deirdre Mitchell McLean.
Oops.
Oh, let's.
There we go.
Kevin's playing with the Facebook now.
No, I was playing with something.
See, not me.
I was looking for something. That's fine. You keep going.
I've also learned that if you put your phone on no answer, it still will play the damn video with volume. So
yeah, no, it's really super annoying.
Yeah.
I just want to know if other people are asking questions.
Me too.
I'm curious.
We have not had any, but certainly hopefully we will. Because we're about to transition into a topic that Mark and Deirdre tackled on their political R&D podcast.
Oh, I'm so glad I went and got beer at the break.
Yeah, right.
And we'll play a little bit of what they were talking about.
Let's keep going, or let's reopen the economy. And this really feeds into the stereotyping that conservatives care more about money than people. And this is just glaring neon signs that nobody, that the party can't want. Nobody wants to look at somebody saying, I'm okay with this many deaths because money.
Yeah, well, and I wrote an editorial earlier this week that outlined the same thing. It's like, Jason Kenney is basically standing up and saying, we're sending PPE to these these provinces that have been opposing our pipeline. Remember, it's all about being Canadian. And it's like, you just equated the Alberta economic health with the other provinces' actual health.
Yeah.
So talking a little bit about how we're treating people, and that podcast, which you can get on all of your favorite podcast platforms, was in a nutshell talking about how we have the senior and the vulnerable community has been impacted. I'm going to let Deirdre and Mark kind of describe why they discussed about it, and maybe from your perspective what you, since the recording, have been thinking about. Because I do have some questions, and then I will ask some questions after.
I mean, at that, right then, which I will admit, I wasn't sure what you were playing, and it sort of sounded like me, and I'm like, did I just say that? No. Anyway, so now that I'm all caught up, we were, at that point, we were kind of talking about some of the messaging that's going around, and it's not even fully Canadian, right? This is just messaging we're hearing out of the U.S. especially. Like, that's just been so hard to listen to. But when you look at some of the awful things that are coming out of the U.S. and you see a form of that in your Canadian politicians right now, it just makes you angry, makes you want to hit things, because this is just, who thought in 2020 that we would be sitting there going, maybe a few 100,000 people dead isn't a bad thing? Why would we have ever thought that's where we would be in this conversation? And I understand the economy is super important. Also understand it's not just us. It's not like we are alone in this. It's not like we just had a Greece moment where it's, we're suddenly just the only bad managers of the economy or whatever. This is a worldwide thing right now. We're not the only ones suffering. We're going to get through it honestly together. And so just seeing some of this messaging and some of this, it's really tough to kind of, just meander through this sort of thing. Mark, did I explain anything?
By all means, it did. Deirdre and I started off that podcast that this was not going to be a fun podcast to do. Our podcast is much like this venue, some of it's serious, some of it's jokey, great conversation all in all. That episode wasn't. That episode was very difficult to do as a conversationalist, as an analysis, as a discussion. It was not a comfortable conversation to have. Mm-hmm. I did the editing after we did it. And
so he had to listen to it twice.
I listened to it twice before it went live, and it was even worse the second time around. So anybody who's actually sat and listened to the whole thing, thank you. I appreciate you participating in that. It was tough because it really brought to light, and I admitted in the podcast, this is not an area of policy that I give a lot of attention to. And I was really angry after 2 hours of research. And I was really just, after 2 hours of work talking about it and then listening to it. And I'm seeing there's been some great pickup on Twitter. Thank you for those people as well. But it was not comfortable. And the reason it's not comfortable is because we as a society have chosen not to address this part of society. We just pack these people up, put them in a home, and shut the door. And we put that podcast out, and that day there was a news article about a home in New Jersey had hid 17 deaths. And that's acceptable on some stupid level with our governments, with our elected officials. I railed hard against Josephine Pond because we still haven't heard SFA out of her about what's going on with Alberta's long-term care. It's just And that's where a majority of our deaths were. As of the day that I did the research, was what, 2-3 days ago, we were 62% of our deaths were in long-term care.
32 out of 50.
And that's higher than what Italy was having. So like Italy was at 57 and we're at 62. Well, you know, we sit there and compare, when do we get out to play, because Germany's getting out to play. When do we get numbers that are at least equal to Italy's? Because that means we've killed a few less people. Like it was such vitriol. Like I'm angry right now with it. So yeah. And
well, I think
talked to my mother-in-law, and she's like, you know, thank you for talking about these things. She worked with geriatric patients as a nurse, and she's like, thank you for bringing this up. But it's angry.
I think it speaks to our attitude towards the elderly across the Western world. Like, you know, I come from an immigrant family, so in my family, typically parents were taken care of by their kids. Like that's the way that they were raised, and the way that they've been, and the way that we kind of lived our lives, was that when someone gets older, they don't go to a facility, they stay with their family, which is probably why actually Italy's numbers are lower, and why you see the numbers in France as well are lower in terms of elderly patients who have died.
Actually, it was 57% of theirs, so it's actually they were on the high end of the scale. We're just higher than that, so.
Yeah, but lower than us, is what I meant.
Yeah.
So what you see, I think, is that we really do fundamentally have to re-examine the way that we approach issues around end-of-life care. And I had a Twitter post about this yesterday, because it's not just actually end-of-life care. Like, a lot of people who are in extended care facilities are people with MS, are people with Huntington's, are people with early onset Alzheimer's. Like, we're not just talking about people who are 70 plus.
Right.
There are a lot of people in those facilities who are extremely high need. And these facilities are privately owned and privately run, and they are run to make a profit. That is the purpose of them. And that, to me, is extremely problematic. And I think that we need to look at how we could potentially address senior care in a more nationalized way in government-run facilities that were not existing to make a profit. When you're paying $2,000 to sit in a room and get 3 meals a day, and then maybe possibly given a bath, maybe. Like, I think we really have to look at this. And that is no criticism of the people who work in those facilities. Like, I volunteered in an extended care facility throughout junior high and high school and into my university years. And the people who work there are incredibly dedicated, but they're overworked. They're working 48 to 72 hour shifts. If they're RNs or LPNs, if they're NAs, they're working, like I think you guys both spoke about in your podcast, they're working all over the place because they don't work full shifts at one facility. So we need to look at this, because we are failing our parents and our grandparents. Like, my stepmom had to go to the hospital. She's now in care for the next month. And I was absolutely terrified at the idea that she was going to be in a facility, because I didn't know what that would mean for her. Mm-hmm. And we shouldn't, when someone has to be there for their medical care, we shouldn't have to be scared that something bad is going to happen to them when they're in a hospital or in an extended care facility.
Mm-hmm.
But we also
we equally as mad about it.
Yeah, and then we also need to have our elected officials actually give a rat's ass, and that's what really stemmed that whole podcast for us, was whatever his name is. I don't even want the MP, the tweet he put out.
Oh, that idiot!
Yeah, that idiot. You know, of that party that wants to form government. Like, that's.
Oh, was that O'Toole?
No, not that idiot. A different idiot.
It's a fact. Nobody really knows who he is. That's the only thing they know about him, is he doesn't like the elderly.
And it's not like he's 26.
Mark Dalton.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
But I mean, like, it's not like Dalton's exactly, trying to figure out when he can go drinking in the bars, because they will be legal then. He's cresting on. Maybe that's his next phase of life after, lifetime pension. So, And I'm sure he wouldn't be overly keen with being identified with, hey, Mark Dalton's living in this house. It's okay. He'll be dead in a year. He'll be okay with us opening the economy because of this tweet.
Yeah, there's been a lot. There's just been so much, actually. Like it's actually shocking to me how often this has come up in conversation. I'm seeing it on Facebook among people that I know, right? Like sometimes you see things on Twitter, you're like, I don't know if that's a bot or a real person. On Facebook, I know pretty much everyone that's on my Facebook friend list, and those are real people. This is what they're saying, right? And it's tough. It is tough to, I don't know.
Because I think it's also that maybe what this is actually hammering home for us is that not only is this our parents or our grandparents, but this is one day going to be all of us. Right? Like all of us are going to be in a position where that might be where we are. And do we want someone to just throw us away and treat us like we don't matter? Because that is, and this is again, no commentary on family and friends and all of that. But when I worked there, I saw a lot of people whose family kind of just stopped coming because it was difficult, especially for Alzheimer's patients. Right. They just kind of weren't there and they weren't present. And so a lot of these people this is it. Like the staff in this facility are their family. They're the last people that these people are ever going to see. And unfortunately, only now is it becoming regular for people to see how shitty it is, like how terrible it is for a lot of people to be in these facilities. Like it's not a loving, safe, happy environment.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even worse now, pile that all on to the fact that a lot of long-term care homes, families cannot see them now. There's so many restrictions at this point that they're not even going to, really at this point, the people that have passed on during this time are not even going to get a really, truly proper tribute of their life. Like, they will not be honored in the way that they deserve to be honored because of what is happening. And it just illustrates, like, it feels to me like as a society, and it's easy, sometimes it gets really easy to blame the conservatives for how they treat people. And there's some validity to that argument. I'm not going to dispute that. But I do think, as in general, I do not believe, and I've been thinking about this, I don't believe that there has been a single government that has truly treated seniors with a high priority. Like, I don't think a center-left party has necessarily stood up and said, look at us, we have found that model. I think that as a society and as a government, we have generally failed the seniors. Like, I think that is something, I don't see anyone that has shown a light and said, look at us, we're great.
There's an editorial cartoon out of Ontario that I saw, I think this morning, where it was 4 panels and it was a picture of Mike Harris and then Dalton McGuinty and then Kathleen Wynne and then Doug Ford and whatever 4 or 5 words they put in, basically alluding that we'll treat seniors better. And it was, the implication
We've all said
is
it.
that it's been 20 years and they haven't, we treat seniors better, as much like the Alberta economy. We plan to diversify. It's great.
We won't pass away the next
we don't actually mean it.
Yeah.
And that's what bugged me about doing that podcast, is that it just became very clear that this was just lip service.
And I remember talking to my parents and them saying, and their seniors, and them saying back in Christmas, like, in the federal election and even in the provincial elections, were senior issues even brought up as election issues? I don't recall one. Like,
this goes back to, it's the calculation of the politics, is that predominantly seniors are going to vote Conservative, so it doesn't matter what you tell them, they're going to vote Conservative. So that, and it's no different than you take a look at students. For the most part, none of them vote. So you don't worry about, you're only bribing the portion of the population that might be swayed. And you do grandstanding for the ones that don't.
Yeah. It's and it's unfortunate, and I think that this has been. I think this pandemic has revealed how we are treating them, and I think that this is as tough as this conversation is to have, I do think it's important to have and continue. And I'm hoping to get a senior advocate on that we can talk to a little bit about how to go forward on this, because I do think this is really important going forward, because I hope whenever this ends, in the after times, that we do take senior care a lot more seriously. And at least,
as I said in the podcast, people are going to learn that this is a provincial issue, not a federal issue. And then they're going to start asking questions about the provincial representatives about how this got handled. And I equated in the podcast much to the whole GSA Bill 10 question of 2014 in Alberta. And I door knocked in the riding that Gordon Dirks, who, as the education minister, had put Bill 10 forward. And people were upset with Bill 10. PCs who were supposed to be voting for Gordon Dirks were upset with Bill 10 because it was attacking LGBTQ kids. So that was one of those things that really flipped that riding for against the Conservatives. The question is this going to be one of those issues? Because, as I said, everybody starts generally with 4 grandparents. You don't end up putting 4 into the care home. But this was even an issue back in 2012 when we had care homes that elderly couples couldn't be together in.
Yeah,
remember Danielle Smith and Carrie Toll going hard on this, and they were getting huge traction because people who were at that end of life stage weren't even allowed, we're married for 50 years, but because one person is further along than the other, the second person couldn't go to the same care home. Like, this could be something that takes the UCP off the rails in Alberta. More so than anything else.
Maybe.
It's 3.
Maybe healthcare, senior care. If it remains,
I wouldn't go healthcare. It's loss of doctors and senior care.
Healthcare. I said healthcare.
Yeah. So,
anyway.
Yeah.
It was really uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kevin.
Well, you know what though? I felt it to be important to talk about.
It was.
I won't argue that.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah. So. It was. It is. It honestly should remain.
But it has to remain important when this is over, and I think that is on all of us.
Yeah.
That is the biggest thing right now. Is that so much of the stuff that we're talking about in terms of, whether it's a guaranteed basic income, whether it is senior care, a lot of things are coming out of this. It is our responsibility to make sure that remains an issue, and we call government to account about that when this is over. Because, like Deidre and Mark said, we're probably looking at a federal election in a year and a half. So all of us have to demand that from our members of parliament and from our government, that is a platform issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we typically end these podcasts with something fun, and I have one. I
actually did some research this week.
If you have one,
yay!
Go for it.
All right.
So I stumbled across a tweet this week that was, if you could have anybody that you're following on Twitter follow you back.
Joe Clark!
Is Joe Clark on Twitter?
Yes. He never tweets, but he's there.
That doesn't count then. He's not really on
fine.
Twitter.
I'll think about a secondary one.
And I say this because, and I'm going to pump my own tires, is that, because everybody in the thread was Obama and Elizabeth Warren and Hillary, blah, blah, blah. There's obviously a lot of Democrats in there. And so I hammered out to Charles Adler and said, I would love if Charles Adler followed me, and Charles Adler.
He did.
Good for you.
Good for you. Good job, Charles Adler. Shout out to.
And then he retweeted when I was like, "Yay!" and I had the Brad GIF dancing thing going on, and he retweeted that. So I think I actually got 2 followers because of that.
That was
Charles
a good
Adler.
one.
So I would love to hear who you guys would love to have follow you back.
I thought about that at the time, and I was kind of like, is there somebody right now that I'm currently seeing that I would love. Oh,
Dr.
Dr.
Dina.
Dina. She follows zero. Yeah, that was moistly. She she follows zero people on Twitter. Okay, if I was the one, oh man,
Ooh.
right?
Or you too, so there wouldn't be any competition going on. So.
Or she could just be like, the tweet of God and follow Justin Bieber. But whoever she follows, that one follow is going to just be like.
I think she follows Alberta Health.
No,
that's the only person, or maybe she doesn't follow anyone.
No, she follows zero.
I'm trying to think because, not to humble brag, but pretty much everybody I want to follow me does.
Okay, well then...
Britney Spears follows me, so that was exciting.
Well, obviously. So, you were bragging about that. So, I was just having my
bragging about it all the time. Britney Spears, bitch. I'm very excited.
Charles Adler is Mark's Britney Spears.
Yeah. Can't you tell? Oops, he did it again. Does everybody want to see him in the Catholic girl outfit? So
that's going to haunt my dreams forever. Thanks, Mark. Who would I want?
Oh, well,
other than Joe Clark?
Then answer me this.
Yes.
Oh, is it going to get worse?
Sure, why not? Who's the most interesting person you followed this week on Twitter?
Okay, so I follow this guy. I believe he's a master's student or a PhD student. I believe he's taking law. He tweets random things about philosophy, and he just makes me laugh. He's out of New York, and I know nothing about him. I just sort of stumbled upon him, and he's funny.
That's why I follow Zellers.
Oh yes.
Zellers.
Oh, I follow Zellers too.
No, yeah, but this week, not just for all time.
No. So his name is Jordan.
I follow Zellers this week.
It's fantastic. Oh, you've been missing out. No, Jordan Perkins, just this random guy who's locked down in New York. And he makes me laugh because he has this slightly higher level humorish things, and I get a kick out of it.
Well, I also follow the guy who did Speaking Moistly because he is my
EDMJON.
Yeah.
What about you, Kevin?
Who? I think everyone that I want to follow me follows me.
So then your most interesting follow this week.
Oh, I now have an answer while Kevin thinks.
I'm still thinking.
Dear Lisa Raitt, please follow me, you beautiful, gorgeous, fantastic, inspirational lady.
I learned that Charles all have to do is ask.
You know what? I should. My most exciting ever was when Rona Ambrose started following me, and I literally did a happy dance in the parking lot like a fucking weirdo. I was just like, yeah, it's happening.
Funny, that's about the same dance I did when Adler followed me this week. So,
and I have to say,
almost in the before times, before he sucked, when Peter McKay started following me, I was like, it's gonna happen now, bitch. And then it was just like, oh.
Do you remember?
Now you're trying to figure out how to get him to stop following you.
Yeah.
You know what? I've been such a bitch to him. You would think it would have worked, but no.
Both Peter and Danielle still haven't blocked me, and I trolled them badly.
Danielle follows me too. Yeah.
I didn't go that far. Danielle doesn't follow me. I just troll her. So.
And you actually.
She actually did an incredibly good segment on senior care and had Nora Loretto on her show, which was shocking to me, given. Wow.
I've also noted that she's only tweeted 5 times in the last 2 weeks. So
true.
She doesn't
God
tweet
bless
all
the
that
pandemic.
She doesn't tweet a lot.
Okay, so do you happen to remember when I went to the conservative event end of February? January, February? It was I was the only person that was covering it live tweeting. So it got just blown up, but I didn't realize I'd be the only one because the media tables were full. We had to get them to bring in more. There was so many media there, and I started tweeting. Apparently I was the only one. After that, so I was sitting with my I was sitting with the Western Standard crew and some other nefarious conservatives. Anyway, so I'm sitting with a bunch of them, and I stand up in the middle of the like we're all around a table, and I stand up and I'm like, yes, Charles Adler followed me back, and they all looked at me going, what? Like,
he recently unfollowed me, so clearly we're on a
who unfollowed you? Charles
Adler.
Oh.
I don't even want to look. Yeah, I won't look right now.
I want that Eric Alper to follow me.
Ah.
I would love to have him follow me because
he's doing really well with a lot of his stuff lately. I noticed.
Yeah. He's probably one of the better tweeters out there.
So one of the people that I started following this week, and I don't know why I hadn't earlier, is George Conway.
Oh yes, he's amazing.
Well, he's part of the Lincoln Group, who have basically said we're a bunch of Republicans and we're endorsing Joe Biden. And for those who don't know who George Conway is, that would be Kellyanne Conway's husband.
Yes, they don't seem to get along very well when it comes to politics. I can't
on Twitter. No,
no.
But apparently they're married. But I'm waiting to see how the rest of it.
Can you imagine being their kids?
No,
and watching.
At this point,
do that every day?
Oh, I could imagine at this point their kids are like, we're joining the Green Party.
We're voting independent.
Not that Joe Biden is an exactly exciting candidate.
No, we know where you're at with Joe, but
yes.
I'm hoping Kamala gets announced at some point in the next couple months. That
would be great.
That was my vote too.
Yeah, because then maybe he'll die and she can do it.
Oh, that's cruel.
Maybe subtle. So maybe you should put that tweet out and we can discuss it next week about just calling for the deaths of politicians.
I do. You know what? I have a really hard time expressing how I feel, so it's really nice when I finally get there.
Yeah. All right. Why don't we leave it there? How do we?
Great note. Where should we leave it? Let's leave it on the death of Joe Biden. We have called for the death of Joe Biden. Great ending point.
I didn't call for the death of him. That makes it sound like I'm asking people to do something. I just said maybe he'll die, and maybe
much like Trump is calling for the liberation of Minnesota and Michigan. You didn't actually say somebody should die.
There's a third one.
There was
Is it
4
Nebraska?
actually. There was a lot of
Virginia.
Yeah.
Virginia.
Oh, Trumpy.
Yeah.
Kevin is like, why do I have these people on my
That's
show
not
every
what I
day, every week?
said.
At one point, you'll learn.
Steve Ricketts said, "Got to run. Enjoyed listening to everyone's perspectives." And thanks.
Steve stuck up for 2 hours. Good for Steve.
Really?
Good job, Steve.
Steve.
Steve called Mark Andrew close.
Wait, let's all just toast to Steve. Oh, wait, where did my beer go? Oh, there it is.
To Steve. Hopefully he sees the end of it.
I think my wife's also made it for 2 hours, but
yeah, but she loved you, so that doesn't count.
I hope people love me. I'm never sure. But how do we follow everyone on Twitter?
Carefully.
At Mitchell_AB.
At Kristen Rayworth.
At AB Mark Taylor.
And I am at KEVOLE. We will be back next week talking about stuff. I may have a guest next week. We will be talking about stuff and things. I'm looking at bringing a guest in next week, but we will see.
Things. I don't know about things.
Okay, stuff for sure.
Where did my arms go?
Your arms are gone. For those on Facebook Live, thank you for watching. For those on Spreaker, thank you for listening. And we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
And yes.
Oops,
not
wait. Quite, but close.
And
are we done?
Almost.
Not even close. I got that much beer left. So.
No, I meant like the live.
Have we stopped recording?
Yeah, I'll be right